Are you hearing? Okay. Thanks, Steve. We've gathered a panel of women here to talk about RFPs because we know it is a very painful process, and we also know that women get shit done, right? Yeah. So first we're going to talk about, and these women here are going to identify themselves for me, so I don't have to. But first we're going to start with a question that we talked about previously, and that is, what led to your decision to hold an RFP? Who wants to start?
Okay. Can you hear me? Great. First of all, a big shout out to whoever pointed out that my chair didn't have the rung at the bottom. We fixed it. So I'm Ali, and I am the Director of CRM and Retention at Boxed. For those of you who don't know Boxed, we're an online warehouse club with no membership fees. So you can get everything you need in bulk, from toilet paper to liquor. Mostly liquor, if you're me. So I started a Box about 10 months ago, and we really had an email program, we had a push program, we had an SMS program, but nothing talked to each other, and we couldn't find any way to make our current systems talk. So what we really wanted from the RFP was to make everything talk together so that we were talking to each customer like you were one customer, not 5 different customers in 5 different channels, and we sounded like crazy people.
Yeah, and I'll jump in. So I'm Kayla Beck. I'm the Senior Manager of Email Delivery and Quality Control at Southwest Airlines. It's a really long title, so I'm sorry. But we had a sort of a similar experience. We were really interested in looking at a suite of products. So our RFP was actually quite large and significant and involved a lot of stakeholders. But really our true focus was on integrations and efficiencies across a lot of different groups within the marketing department.
Okay, and I'm last to go. I'm Lexi Sigismund. I am the Senior Manager of Digital and Content Strategy at Chobani. And I'm the different one on the panel because we're not direct to consumer. So for us, we put a lot of emphasis on email marketing this year, and we're able to grow our list pretty substantially. So we needed to get a little more savvy in terms of how we were engaging our base and our consumers, as well as tap into that buzzword, get a little more personalized with them.
So how did you choose how to go about pitching your new vendors or vendor?
Yeah, so we started internally. We have a lot of different partners that we work with across the organization. And so in terms of selecting different people that we wanted to be involved in our RFPs, we were really looking for strategic business partners that had existing relationships. So that's really where we started in saying, how can we better build upon relationships that we already have in place, and then working outwards from there, just to make it a little bit easier on us.
It made it easier on you, and
yeah, and when you have an existing relationship with a vendor, if you can capitalize on that and just build on it, then you both win, right? And
you don't have to start from scratch with somebody.
Not at all, and you also have that understanding of things like their support model, things like, are their account teams really great? So if you do have that opportunity, if there are vendors that your organization is already using that also have an ESP, if you're interested in migrating to a new platform, I would consider those. And I would even make those a priority to say, how can we build on those relationships?
You're agreeing there.
Yeah, I would totally agree. We unfortunately didn't really have any companies that we already worked with that could really help us tie everything together. A lot of the systems could work together, but it would involve a lot of data integrations, a lot of our engineering team's kind of time, and you know what kind of happens when you buy like 10 different platforms and you still have to log into 10 different platforms, and nothing really kind of works the way that you envisioned in your head. So we didn't have that opportunity, so we had to go and look for new companies. And we went to a lot. I think we started with about 15. And
15 or 50?
15.
Oh, okay.
I didn't have that much time.
Yeah, 50.
And we really wanted to find out what everyone did. You know, there's a lot of new players in the market that didn't used to be there, 10 years ago. There's some of the old giants that are still trying to revolutionize and change things, and then there's everything in between. Mm-hmm. And then you have the ones that are really specialist towards different kind of categories, whether it's a publisher, an e-com retailer. So trying to figure out who would sit best with us and that, would really help us. We didn't want necessarily someone that, wouldn't grow with us and wouldn't support us.
And jumping off on that kind of veteran to newbie kind of research, we worked really closely with our IT and tech team to make sure that we were evaluating kind of the gold star partners, potential partners in the space, but then also did a little bit of research on our own to make sure we were finding those newbies or their other partners that weren't identified by that team to make sure that we were evaluating everyone that we could.
Great. Now, I know you probably didn't have to lose a valuable part of your male anatomy, but I'm sure it was still a painful process. Now, what perhaps, is there something you can tell us or thrill us with the most painful points of that whole process?
Can I talk about the most enjoyable? Just because, I like to be a rebel. The whining and dining was kind of fun. Just there's got to be an upside to this, right?
That's true. I am such a glass half full person. Honestly, so many opinions. Every single person in your organization will suddenly come out of the woodwork and have an opinion about what you're trying to accomplish. So just be prepared for that. I love all of my cohorts. We call them cohorts very dearly with a capital H. But man, sometimes you just want to tell them to stuff it. So you kind of have to get past that and be willing to at least hear their perspectives and know where you're going, but also be really confident and strong in your voice and what you're trying to achieve. But yeah, get ready for that because you're going to get a lot of opinions.
Yeah, and it even helps to solicit them. So we went to everyone from like finance, who's, I'm going to be honest, opinion we didn't really care about, who just wanted like 30-day payment terms. I'm like, fine, we'll stick that in the RFP. To engineering, operations, everyone has an opinion. When you're sending emails, you can cause chaos in our fulfillment centers if you send it at the wrong time and don't throttle.
Well, a lot of these previous presenters were talking about how they had to consolidate in order to avoid that kind of thing.
Yeah, so get the opinions of everyone, and if you ask people, they'll be more likely to buy into your end product when, even whether they do or don't get what they want, at least they know that they were taken into account.
Yeah, I think we did a lot of the upfront to make sure that everyone could have their opinion and that we could address it in the appropriate way. But I think maybe not the most difficult, but the most surprising thing for us was timing. From the research phase to actually RFPing and then receiving the proposals back, it took about 2 months, which was not surprising. We had allotted that time. But the piece after that of making sure our legal team and our IT team and tech team, as well as our marketing team, were kind of aligned to make sure that we could really get this right. I think that first piece of the implementation phase took a little bit longer than we expected, and then I'm jumping off topic a little bit, but getting to that fully stood up ESP took way longer than we thought. And again, we're not a D2C company, so the amount of emails that we have are probably smaller than your teams.
And you make a really great point. So we started our process of looking for a suite at the end of 2016, and we are about 3 to 4 weeks out of completing our migration to Adobe Campaign for our new ESP vendor. So yeah, it's a very lengthy process, and of course it depends on the size of your organization, the number of stakeholders, your integration with technology partners, but be prepared for that because it does take a while.
And allot that time, I think, like budget for that time.
Yeah.
For us, it took about 9 months. Literally, we could have had a child in the time that it took. To go from like, oh, we need a new ESP to
Well, you did have
celebrate.
a child. your new SP.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was like, did I? Damn. I was like, how drunk was I when I was talking to you last night? Yeah, I mean, it really is like having a child. And, we celebrated a couple of weeks ago the success of our implementation. I would describe it actually, we're never going to finish this implementation. We have an engineer who's still going to be working full-time on it, probably for the next year, to get more and more of what we want so that we can do all that great personalization, so that we can really target everything we want. But to have at least all of our emails, pushes, and SMSs up and running in it, so we opened a lot of champagne.
Excellent. Good idea. Good choice. A lot of people out here are wondering, what should I do? What should I avoid? Bring your lessons to them and tell them what they should look for and cut corners with so that they don't have to go through so much agony.
The 2 pieces of advice I would give is, 1, know exactly what you want. When you get down to the last 2 and there's almost nothing between them, what are you willing to sacrifice over something else. Because there is never going to be a perfect partner out there that does absolutely everything to the minutest detail that you would love. So what is really important to you? And then documentation. So if you know going into this, every API you have, what your data fields look like, you're going to be in a much better place than we were, who kind of, rocked up to this and then started documenting halfway through. Whoops.
I think for us, my advice is kind of similar. Make sure that you know what you're looking for. Something that was really helpful for us, and we included it in our RFP, was what are those must-haves and what are those nice-to-haves? Because that really helps you determine who you want to work with, and if you're finding that it's hard to decide between two, those nice-to-haves might push one partner to the top. And something else that we did when we were actually sitting through the proposals was we created a one-pager that was, I guess, an evaluation scorecard of those must-have items that also were part of the need-to-have too, so that we could take notes and score those vendors as we were going through this process to make sure that it's really fresh in our mind and we are making our decisions based on what exactly we've asked for.
Yes, that's interesting. We actually did something very similar where we had a scorecard and everyone was able to turn those in anonymously from things they were excited about to things they were concerned with, so definitely something that I would consider for your organization. I would say that one other thing is kind of think about non-traditional questions as well. So one of the things looking back that we wish we would have explored a little bit better is understanding the way that an ESP might recommend that you structure your team, for example. Are there best practices? Are there certain skills or talents that we should have in place? Fortunately, we have a very large team and a very technical team as well. But you just want to think a little bit outside of the box and beyond some of the bright and shiny things that you're looking at to understand, like, really operationally speaking, how will we best work within this tool on a day-to-day perspective? And that's something we certainly could have done a little bit better.
We can always improve. But also, alternatively, also, if you want to give advice to the ESP people out there, I mean, what would you tell them about how to approach you or what to do with the RFP that you've sent out?
We had some corkers that, they came in and met with us, and then there'd be a question from, a tech guy they'd have on the phone, and he'd be like, "Oh, so you're e-com?" And like our CMO's in the room, and like everyone's face just drops. Whoops. And to be in the room as well, like we tried to do a few of the meetings. They were like 6-hour meetings with potential ESPs, and like trying to do them over the phone, they didn't, see our faces, didn't get our reactions, and like when they'd say something and like literally my engineer's head hit the table, and like we're slacking each other going, "Oh God, there it goes." So definitely make it a real personal experience.
Yeah, jumping off of that, I think, again, it's know your audience. We are not e-com, so I don't need all of the bells and whistles right now that some companies want to pitch, which I understand why they're pitching to us, but know the company that you're talking to, as well as really what will help them grow. For us, it was all about finding a partner who could help us grow, so we wanted to see that. Today it's email marketing, but tomorrow it's, that real-time connectivity to make sure that we are optimizing all of our campaigns. So that's my answer.
I honestly thought you were going to say like more schmoozing, so I'm a little surprised.
I mean, I did. Honestly, the people we went with, I did give them a little lecture afterwards at another night in a bar, which I think I'm starting to sound like an alcoholic, but was complaining a little about, schmooze.
Totally. But something similar to what you were saying is absolutely know your audience. As I mentioned earlier, my team is full of technical developers. They're not impressed by bells and whistles. They want to know the magic behind the curtain. And we did see some vendors who came in that did not have the technical expertise to stand up to technical questioning, and that did not serve them particularly well. I would also say that if you know their current platform, be really astute in making sure that you can make comparisons. Every ESP has different, or every vendor has different terminology or a different way of describing a specific tool. And if your audience doesn't quite understand how it's similar to what they're doing today, it just makes it difficult for them to connect. So know the language of the tool you're going up against, if one is in place, and speak to the audience in that way. You've got to know them.
That sounds like a lot to learn all those languages.
You have to prepare. I mean, you're coming in as a vendor to impress, right? You're coming in to say, we can be strategic partners. And the only way that you can come in and say, let's be a strategic partner is understanding where they're coming from. So that's a responsibility you do have to take upon yourself.
I'd echo it with having the technical people in the room. We struggled with a few of them, and like some of them brought them in on the phone. But we really want to get in the weeds of how is this going to work? You know, how does this integrate with our system? We had engineering and business insights in the room ready to ask those hard questions. So if there's no one there, it's kind of a waste of their time, and they're not going to enjoy the platform.
And to that point, I got a lot of these questions, but ask who is going to be in the room. Like, ask what their titles are, because that will also help you figure out how you want to communicate to the broader group.
Excellent. Well, I think we could turn this over to questions from the audience now. Does anybody have a question of these wonderful women?
This is a panel that's ripe for questions both from vendors and the marketer side.
That's right. Vendors?
I think we scared them. Did I scare you? It's okay.
Okay, I'll give some advice. Oh, you have a question.
Hi, Neil Gogate from Mattel. A question I had for you, Kayla, was you talked about wanting to get the right people into the room to make sure that you have everyone accounted for. Did you need to get senior leadership buy-off on that? Because at a company like Southwest, I'm sure there's multiple groups and orgs. How did you get the buy-in to get all those people to participate in something like that?
Oh man, it was, yeah. For our organization, it was a huge investment of time. So absolutely, our CMO was incredibly aware of our intentions and our goals. Because again, we were looking for a suite integration. We were looking for everything from design capabilities to the email platform itself to an MRM suite. And it took a lot of organization. Even scheduling was complicated. Trying to get vendors in the office for a full day of a demo to talk to all of those points and all of those individuals. Getting that on everyone's calendar internally took forever. So yeah, if depending on how many stakeholders that you need to involve, you absolutely have got to get leadership buy-in, and they need to be aware of the activities. So we actually had a dedicated team, and we brought in some outside consultants to help us run all of the RFP work, which is something I would recommend doing too, depending on how big it is that you're talking.
Hey there, this is Gautam Pani in the back of the room from What Counts. Question about scope group for you guys. So when you involve all those people, how often do you find that your RFP goes from this scope to this scope, right? And then at some point, after you go through the whole exercise, then you have to whittle things down and revise, because presumably vendors are going to come in and try to match what your scope is. And so there's this little song and dance that happens there, right? Could you speak to that a little bit?
I can jump in first. I think for us, it was doing that level set up front and making sure that all of our teams were aligned, whatever department we needed to talk to, so that we didn't run into that. Again, we wanted to make sure that we were doing this right, efficiently, but also allow for that time that it might take. So that upfront is really important.
Yeah, I'd echo the same. If you know what you want up front and it's really clear that that's not going to change, I think you just have to be honest with everyone. And making sure that there is one person who is leading the RFP and they have the final say on scope creep. So just because somebody from another department comes in and says, I now want it to, I don't know, sing and dance, that you can say, no, that's not what we're looking for, and this is why we don't need that.
Yeah, I would say that role clarity is very important in an RFP process.
Chris?
Hi, Chris Marriott, Marketing Democracy. How hard was it or challenging did you find it to keep the final decision process objective? And by that I mean every company's got somebody who worked with XYZ ESP before, or the CMO golfs with the head of this marketing cloud or that marketing cloud. So did you find it, I guess it's a two-part question, did you find it challenging to keep the final decision objective, and what were the challenges that you were facing in that path?
Yeah, I can take this one. We definitely did. So we got down to 2 vendors at the end, and the platforms were almost identical. One was probably slightly better at email, one was slightly better at push, but otherwise very similar. But kind of personality-wise, we definitely blended with one company more than the other company. However, they were also a heck of a lot more expensive. So, is it worth that value for the people who are honestly just the sales team anyway and not your account managers? And, we sat in kind of a room with, everyone who was involved in this, and we tried to figure out which one we wanted and just discuss it. And we kept finding that we lent towards this one platform that we had a better relationship with, but we kind of kept coming up for hacks to how to get around the things that we thought were the problems with it. And eventually we just had to acknowledge that if we're hacking this system before we've even bought this system, this might not be the right system for us.
So I can tell you, coming from a large company, there are a lot of relationships, and that can be extremely challenging because I think it can blind people's perspectives. So I think that having a system in place, as you were mentioning, having a scorecard kept it a slightly more objective. Again, having someone who's running the RFP who may be more objective or maybe isn't even necessarily involved in the day-to-day process is also integral. They can help kind of weed through some of that stuff. But I would also challenge the people in the room that if you feel like you may be being swayed by a relationship, to just step back and look at the facts of the tools, and don't forget the people who live in that tool every day. Especially some of us in slightly more senior positions get to go on great retreats like this and also get a little bit more schmoozed at times. But at the end of the day, it's about my team. And it's about the job that they have to come in and do every single day. And that matters to me far more than a dinner or a schmoozy relationship I've had in the past. So if you are someone who is looking for a vendor, please check yourself and remember that. But also there are ways, again, with perhaps scorecards, having someone who's a little bit more agnostic in the process leading it, there are ways you can mitigate that. But it's real. It's out there.
Yeah, I love the idea of thinking about your team, because you're probably going to have this tool for 2-3 years. I mean, honestly, who wants to do an RFP that frequently? So this is something that you're going to have to live with. So it needs to be more than who is smoozing you, who you have a relationship for. If you've worked with someone in the past and you love their tool, that could be a bonus for them. But it shouldn't be the reason that you choose this tool. It has to be whatever suits this company and this time that you're in.
Yeah, we were definitely, software was really important, but not that I would say go for the team that's schmoozing you, but go for the team that also is putting your goals at the forefront and that they want to help you achieve your goals. So I think both of those things are really important, but it's more of then you're starting to evaluate the software with the people.
Hi, I'm Megan from Pandora over here. This actually leads kind of well into the question I wanted to ask. At a previous company, we went through migration RFP process, and what I think might have been surprising to the vendor to hear was that our director and higher level people hadn't gone through ESP migrations before. So there were people like senior managers who wound up having a little bit more weight in the conversation than would have normally happened. So I'm curious, who from your team internally was important to making these decisions, and was there anyone that surprised you? Anyone that you would recommend having in the room? I know, Kayla, you said that you're thinking of your team and the people that are actually executing. So I'm curious who was involved.
Yeah, so it honestly felt like half the department was involved, and we have a pretty big department. But to talk to that point specifically, I do think that depending on your organization, there can be a tendency to leave important decisions to senior leaders. And just don't make that mistake. Make sure that you're including the people on your teams. Again, even from a change curve perspective, it's incredibly important, right? It gets them on board. But in our case, we had a director level who was kind of our senior sponsor. And of course, all the way up to our executive leadership was aware. But she was most involved, and from there it was senior managers and down, and it came down to your role. So if you had an integral role in whatever tool it was that we were looking at, again, suite perspective, you were involved. And again, it was up to the manager whether or not to include people from their teams as well. I thought it was important when talking about a new ESP platform to include my entire team, and I sure did.
I can speak to this one pretty well because this was my team's first time going through an ESP RFP. We'd done RFPs before, but for an ESP, this was our first one. And I think back to my point of the level setting up front, that kind of allowed us as a marketing team to make that final decision. We still included our CIO and all of the proposals that were presented to us. But at the end of the day, it was our marketing team, myself, and the other teams who could potentially be working with that potential partner.
Yeah, I would encourage you to include all the teams that will be involved. So it was really important for us to have an engineer involved. You know, the guy's actually going to be hooking everything together for us. You know, he went through all their technical documents before they even arrived and had all the sorts of awkward questions to ask that we certainly hadn't gone into, you know, the different programming languages that they were using. And to get buy-in from everyone at the different levels that are going to be using it. So yes, you know, our CTO was involved, but to be honest, his opinion counted less than, you know, the engineer who was going to be building it. And then data science as well. You know, think about how you're going to use this tool to report. Do you need it to have reports built in? Are you going to have those reports sent to your own database? So just making sure that it's everyone from every level that might need to use this tool or get information from it.
How much was future-proofing a part of the process? I mean, in any process like this, when you're doing a new platform, you want to make sure that you're anticipating needs that you may not have right now. So there's always some degree of soul searching. Where are we headed? What are we going to need? What are our ambitions? What role did that play in this process, or did that just overcomplicate it?
That was the whole reason for the process, right? At least in our case, we wanted to push the envelope, and we wanted to go further, and we wanted to be challenged as a company to say, what could we be doing? What should we be doing? So there was an expectation that vendors coming in were helping us see where we wanted to go and aligning to that goal. So there was a lot of discussion up front in preparing our vendors to make sure they understood our future goals, what we were looking at in terms of growth, just setting their expectations so they knew and they had a fighting chance coming in to be able to best represent their product to meeting those goals. So you have to do your part in preparing the vendors that are speaking as well, if that's something that is a huge value for you. But for us, the future was where we were going.
And we were the same too. Our goal was to find a partner who could really grow with us. We had specific email marketing needs right now, but show us where we can go in the future. And maybe we're not buying those in the upfront of the contract, but we know that we have the opportunity to do that down the road.
Yeah, future-proofing was really important for us, and not just from what the tool could do now, but what the tool could do in the future. So we didn't want to be sold on kind of just, you know, the wants that could happen. Everyone has, you know, the idea of we're going to get to the right marketing message at the right time in the right channel, but we kind of needed to see the roadmap of how someone was going to get there. Because if we were going to get there, you know, we're going to need a partner to get there with us. So kind of having that vision, but also not having it like so much of a blue sky that you couldn't tell us how you were going to get there or when you were going to get there, because that became a little bit of an issue for us.
Did you want to enlarge on how that became an issue for you?
Yeah, so like one of the partners we struggled with really couldn't tell us how they were evolving, and like we'd loved the platform, but we wanted to know, you know, in, let's call it 4 years' time, I'm hopefully not doing another RFP in 5 years, what would the platform be like? And just that we're going to, you know, optimize channels. It doesn't really tell us, you know, where we should be working to or how much this is going to grow with us. You know, we always joke that, you know, if we were going to have an abandoned cart program, we want the best abandoned cart program there is. It's not there yet, but, you know, we're going to get there. So how will they help us grow with that? And we asked a lot of them scenarios. So as well as asking, like, all the awkward questions of, do you do this, that, and the other, it was things like, if you were going to have an abandoned cart, how would you set it up for us? And maybe give some of the unique challenges that we have. For example, we have 3 different warehouses with 3 different stock levels, maybe 3 different prices. You know, how does that all feature into what you're doing? And then what would this evolve into in a few years?
Good.
Nina, panel, we're going to continue this in the RFP, in our RFP roundtable later this morning that Chris is going to be leading for us. So thanks very much, everybody. That was great.